That day I caught her red-handed. It was a Friday, late afternoon, sun dipping low over the hills, casting that golden glow you only get in early fall. I'd just wrapped up work at the site early. Cranes were quiet, guys had already punched out, and I was feeling good. Figured I'd surprise Emma, my wife of 7 years, with a little something special. She's nuts about Pad CU from that Thai joint downtown, the one with the red lanterns out front. Throw in some sweet chili dumplings, those crispy little pockets she can't stop eating, and I knew she'd light up like a kid on Christmas. I tossed the idea around in my head, grinning like an idiot, thinking we could eat in the car, windows down, like we did back when we were high school sweethearts, stealing fries from each other's bags and laughing till we couldn't breathe. I tried calling her from the truck, my old Ford rattling as I idled in the lot. No answer. Her phone went straight to voicemail, that cheery message she recorded years ago, back when we were still renting that shoebox apartment on Maple. I shot her a text. "Hey babe, got a surprise. You at the office?" Nothing came back. That was weird. Emma's glued to her phone, always texting, always checking emails. Probably stuck in some meeting, I figured, shrugging it off. Her marketing job kept her late sometimes, pitching ideas to clients or fussing over spreadsheets, so I swung by the Thai place, grabbed the food, the bag warm in my passenger seat, filling the cab with that savory, peanutty smell. I turned up the radio, some old Springsteen tune, and headed to her office, picturing her face when she saw the dumplings. The office park was just off the highway, a squat, modern building with too many windows, and a fancy sign that read Crestview Solutions. By the time I pulled in, the lot was near empty, just a couple cars scattered across the asphalt. Emma's blue Civic among them, parked crooked like always. The sky was turning purple, streetlights buzzing to life. I squinted up at the second floor, where her team's office was. Most of the windows were dark, but the break room glowed, light spilling through the glass like a beacon. She's working late, I thought, probably hunched over her laptop, muttering about deadlines. I grabbed the food, the paper bag crinkling, and decided to take the side stairwell. Didn't want to waltz through the front lobby like some delivery guy, making a scene. Emma always teased me about being too loud anyway. I was halfway up when I started feeling this itch in my gut, like something wasn't right. Couldn't place it. Just a dumb hunch, I told myself. I hit the second floor landing and peered through the glass wall into the break room. The blinds were half open, giving me a clear view, and that's when it hit me, like a sledgehammer to the ribs. Emma was there all right, but she wasn't alone. She was in his arms. Doug, that coworker she'd mentioned 100 times. Her head was tilted back, laughing, her dark hair spilling over her shoulders. Then she leaned in, and they were kissing, slow and deliberate, like they'd done it before. My stomach churned. The food bag felt like a brick in my hand. I stood there frozen, my breath fogging the glass. Doug's hands were on her waist, pulling her close. She was smiling, that same smile she used to give me when we'd sneak off to the lake on summer nights. My chest tightened, like someone had parked a truck on it. I didn't yell, didn't barge in, didn't even move. I just fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and snapped a photo through the glass. The flash was off. Thank God. They didn't notice. The image burned into my screen. Emma, Doug, the break room's fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. I stared at it for a second, like it wasn't real. Then I turned, walked back down the stairs, and stepped into the cool night air. The food was still in my hand, but I didn't feel hungry anymore. Back in my truck, I set the bag on the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard. The radio was still on, some ad for car insurance droning in the background. I didn't turn it off. I just sat there, the photo on my phone searing a hole in my pocket, and tried to figure out what the hell just happened. 7 years. 7 years of building a life together. Late nights fixing up our house, planning for kids someday, laughing over burnt dinners, and now this. Just started the engine and drove. The Pad CU going cold beside me. I couldn't go home. Not to our house with her books on the coffee table and her lavender shampoo in the shower. The thought of walking through that door made my skin crawl. So I just drove. No plan, no destination, just me, the truck, and the hum of the tires on the asphalt. The city lights faded behind me, replaced by strip malls and gas stations, their neon signs buzzing in the dark. I kept replaying that moment in my head. Emma's smile, Doug's hands, the way they didn't even notice me standing there. It wasn't just the kiss. It was how easy it looked, how natural, like I didn't exist. I ended up at a motel off the highway, the kind of place truckers and drifters crash for a night. The vacancy sign flickered, one letter half dead, buzzing like a dying fly. The lot was full of beat-up old Fords like mine, rust creeping along the fenders, tires bald from too many miles. I pulled in, grabbed my wallet, and headed to the front desk. The clerk, a guy with a stained polo and a cigarette dangling from his lip, didn't even look up from his phone. $40 cash, he mumbled. I handed it over, got a key with a chipped plastic tag, and found my room, number 12, down a concrete walkway that smelled like mildew and cheap bleach. Inside, the room was what you'd expect. A sagging bed with a faded floral comforter, a TV bolted to the wall, and a carpet that crunched under my boots. I dropped onto the bed, still in my work jacket, the photo burning a hole in my phone. I pulled it up, stared at it again. Emma's dark hair, Doug's smug grin. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't do it. It was proof. Proof of something I didn't want to believe. I tossed the phone on the nightstand and rubbed my face, trying to push the image out of my head. It didn't work. My gut was knotted up, a mix of hurt and something hotter, something meaner. Rage, maybe, not the kind that makes you punch walls, but the kind that simmers, slow and heavy, like oil in a pan about to catch fire. Morning came, gray and cold through the motel's paper-thin curtains. I hadn't eaten, hadn't even touched the pad CU, still sitting in the truck. My phone had a dozen missed calls from Emma, a couple texts. "Where are you? Call me." I ignored them, called my boss instead, told him I was sick. My voice sounded flat, like someone else was talking. He didn't ask questions, just told me to feel better. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the cracked paint on the wall. I'm an engineer by trade, fixing problems, breaking things down to their parts, finding what's broken. That's how I think. Methodical, step by step. And sitting there with that knot in my gut and the photo on my phone, I started turning it over like a blueprint. This wasn't just Emma stepping out. Something deeper was off, like a gear slipping in a machine you thought you knew inside out. I grabbed a notepad from the nightstand, one of those cheap ones with the motel's name stamped on it, and started jotting down what I knew. Emma's late nights at the office, the way she'd brush off questions about Doug, saying he was just a coworker. Good with clients. The times she'd get cagey when I asked about her day, changing the subject with a smile. I thought about our life, our house, our business, the way we'd built it all together, but now cracks were showing. I didn't have answers, not yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going home until I figured out what the hell was going on. Saturday morning came, gray and heavy, the motel room's thin curtains doing a lousy job of keeping out the light. I hadn't eaten since Thursday, hadn't even touched that pad CEW still sitting in my truck, probably rancid by now. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "Leo, please, where are you?" But I let it sit unanswered on the nightstand, next to the crumpled motel notepad where I'd scribbled my thoughts last night. I grabbed my laptop, fired it up, and decided to dig into something I hadn't touched in years. The books for our joint LLC. Emma always handled the finances for our small contracting business. Harper & Sons Construction? It wasn't much, just a few crews doing residential jobs, decks, and kitchen remodels around town. But it was ours. She'd always been better with numbers, or so she said, her voice all confident as she waved off my questions with a smile. "You stick to the blueprints, Leo," she'd tease, tapping her pen on the ledger. "I've got this." And I trusted her, signed where she told me, didn't look too hard. Why would I? She was my wife. But that Saturday, sitting on the sagging motel bed with a stale coffee from the lobby, I opened our accounting software and started poking around, my gut telling me there was more to this mess than what I saw through that break room glass. The laptop screen glowed harsh in the dim room, numbers and dates staring back at me like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. At first it looked normal: payrolls, material costs, invoices for lumber and drywall. But then I noticed a vendor payment, $2,300 to Brightline Solutions for consulting services. Never heard of them. I scrolled back 6 months, then a year. More payments to Brightline, all small, $500 here, $2,000 there. Never enough to ping the bank's fraud alerts. I jotted the name down on the notepad, my handwriting shaky from too much coffee and not enough food. Then I found another vendor, Crestview Analytics. That name hit me like a brick. Crestview was the name of Emma's office building. Coincidence? My jaw tightened as I kept digging. There were dozens of transfers, all under $3,000, spread out like breadcrumbs. Reimbursements for travel expenses to places we'd never worked. Cities like Raleigh, Charlotte, even one in Atlanta. We were a local outfit, never took jobs more than an hour from home. I pulled up the bank statements, cross-checking dates. Some of the transfers matched days Emma said she was working late or meeting clients. My heart pounded, not just from the betrayal I'd seen, but from something colder, uglier. This wasn't just her stepping out with Doug. She'd been siphoning money from our business, our life, right under my nose. I leaned back against the headboard, the springs creaking, and ran my hands through my hair. The numbers didn't lie. $38,000 gone over 2 years. Maybe more if I kept digging. Shell companies, fake invoices, transfers timed to slip past notice. Emma wasn't just cheating on me with some slick coworker. She was stealing from us, from the business we'd built from nothing. I thought about the late nights I'd spent bidding jobs, the weekends I'd worked to keep us afloat, all while she was cooking the books. My hands clenched into fists, the notepad crumpling in my grip. I wanted to call her, demand answers, but that wasn't the move. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Needed every piece of this puzzle laid out. So I kept digging, downloading statements, screenshotting transactions, my engineer's brain kicking into gear. Methodical, precise, unstoppable. Monday morning rolled in, gray and damp, the kind of day that makes you want to stay in bed with the covers pulled tight. But I was up before dawn, sitting in that musty motel room, the air thick with the smell of old carpet and burnt coffee from the lobby's ancient machine. My laptop was still open, screen cluttered with bank statements, screenshots, and a spreadsheet I'd thrown together tracking every shady vendor payment I'd found in our LLC's books. My hands shook as I stuffed the printouts into a manila folder, the edges crinkled from being gripped too hard. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't sit still anymore. I'd called a forensic accountant on Sunday, a guy named Carl I found through a buddy who'd dealt with some shady suppliers once. Carl sounded gruff on the phone, like he'd seen it all, but he told me to bring everything I had. Then I tracked down a family lawyer, a woman named Diane who had a no-nonsense rep around town. Her office was in a brick building downtown, squeezed between a deli and a pawn shop, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking. I pulled into the lot, my truck's tires crunching on loose gravel, and grabbed the folder. My boots felt heavy climbing the narrow stairs to Diane's office, like I was carrying more than just paper. Inside, the place was small but tidy, wood-paneled walls, a desk piled with files, and a coffee maker humming in the corner. Diane was in her 50s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, her graying hair pulled back tight. Carl was already there, a heavy-set guy in a rumpled suit, flipping through my printouts with a pen in his teeth. I handed over the folder, bank statements, screenshots of transfers to Brightline Solutions and Crestview Analytics, my scribbled notes on the dates and amounts. "This is what I've got," I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. "Found it Saturday. Something's wrong with our business accounts." Carl spread the papers across the desk, muttering to himself as he traced lines with a yellow highlighter. Diane leaned over, scanning the pages, her lips pressed thin. The room was quiet except for the tick of a wall clock and the occasional squeak of Carl's chair. After what felt like forever, Carl looked up. his bushy eyebrows raised. "This is clean work," he said, almost impressed. "Small transfers, all under $3,000, spread out to avoid bank flags. Shell companies, probably. Whoever did this knew how to cover their tracks." He tapped a page. "But not well enough. These vendors don't exist," I checked. Diane leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking, and let out a low whistle. "Leo," she said, her voice calm but heavy, "you've got her, and not just on the infidelity." She nodded at the photo I'd included, the one of Emma and Doug in the break room, time-stamped Friday night. "This is financial fraud, embezzlement, plain and simple. With what you've got here, bank records, those fake vendors, you can walk away with everything. The business, the house, all of it." She paused, studying my face. "Assuming that's what you want." I should have felt something. Vindication, maybe, or relief. But all I felt was tired, like I'd been swimming against a current I never saw coming. My shoulders slumped, the weight of the weekend settling into my bones. I thought about our house, the one we'd painted blue together, the kitchen table where we'd planned our future. I thought about Emma's laugh, how it used to light up a room. Now it was all numbers and lies. "I don't know what I want," I admitted, rubbing my eyes. "Just want to know why." Carl grunted, stacking the papers. "People get greedy or desperate. Doesn't always matter why." Diane was kinder, sliding a notepad toward me. "Take your time, Leo," she said. "But with this evidence, you've got options. Divorce, civil suit, even criminal charges if you want to push it." I nodded, barely hearing her, my mind stuck on Emma's smile in that photo, on the money she'd bled from our dreams. I left the office with a handshake and a promise to call tomorrow. Outside, the rain had started, cold and steady, soaking my jacket as I trudged back to my truck. Monday night, I pulled my truck into our driveway, the blue house looming under the streetlights like it belonged to someone else. The manila folder with all the evidence, bank statements, screenshots, that damning photo of Emma and Doug, was tucked under the passenger seat, out of sight. My stomach churned, but I'd made up my mind in that motel room. I wasn't going to tip my hand. Not yet. I had to play this smart, like I was wiring a building. One wrong move, and the whole thing could spark and burn. So I grabbed the cold, greasy bag of Pad CU, tossed it in a dumpster on the way, and walked through our front door like nothing had happened. Emma was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, the air thick with the smell of garlic and onions. She turned, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Leo, where have you been?" she said, voice too bright, like she was trying to sell it. She came over, kissed my cheek, and I caught it. Guilt on her breath, sharp and sour, like wine left out too long. "Last-minute meeting," she said, turning back to the stove. "Client was a nightmare. I tried calling you." "Lies, smooth as silk." I forced a grin, my jaw tight. "Missed you, babe," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Got caught up at the site. You know how it is." I played dumb, leaning against the counter, nodding as she rambled about her day. Inside, my blood was simmering, but I kept it locked down. For the next 2 weeks, I was the perfect husband, brought her coffee in the morning, left notes on the fridge, even fixed the leaky faucet she'd been nagging me about. All the while, my lawyer, Diane, and her forensic accountant, Carl, were working in the background, piecing together the puzzle I'd handed them. I met Diane in her office again, that cramped space with the humming coffee maker, and gave her more. Every text Emma sent, every call she dodged when I was around. "We need airtight," Diane said, her glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Surveillance, testimony, anything to back up the financials." I started watching Emma closer, not just at home but at her office. I'd drive by after work, park across the street in a buddy's borrowed sedan so she wouldn't spot my truck. Saw her and Doug twice, laughing as they left together, her hand brushing his arm. Each time I snapped photos, time-stamped, my hands steady even as my chest burned. I dug through her desk at home when she was in the shower, found receipts for dinners in Raleigh, places we'd never been together. One night I checked her work bag, careful like I was defusing a bomb, and found a burner phone, cheap plastic thing with texts to an unknown number. Need more time, one said. Getting risky. My gut twisted, but I put it back. Didn't say a word. The real break came with Emma's assistant, Tara, a nervous kid fresh out of college. I caught her at a coffee shop near the office. Bought her a latte and leaned on her just enough. Tara, I said, keeping my voice low, I know something's off at Crestview. Help me out. She fidgeted, her nails tapping the cup, but finally spilled. Emma's been shredding stuff, she whispered, eyes darting. Invoices, memos, stuff with weird vendor names. She said it was routine, but it didn't feel right. I nodded, kept my face neutral, but inside I was buzzing. Diane had what she needed now, testimony to back the paper trail. Those 2 weeks I lived a double life. Doting husband at home, detective in the shadows. Emma didn't suspect a thing, or if she did, she hid it behind her smiles and quick kisses. I hated every second, but I kept going, fueled by the numbers I'd found, the betrayal I'd seen. Diane called me Friday, her voice clipped. We've got enough, Leo. Financial fraud, witness statements, photos. You're ready when you are. I sat in my truck, staring at our house, the porch light glowing like it was mocking me. I wasn't ready, not for what came next, but I nodded to myself anyway. Time to end the charade. It was a Tuesday, crisp and clear, the kind of day that should have felt hopeful but didn't. I drove to Emma's office, Crestview Solutions, the glass building glinting in the sunlight like it was mocking me. The lot was half full, cars lined up neat except for Emma's blue Civic, parked crooked as always. I wore my work boots and a plain jacket, blending in like any delivery guy. The papers were in a manila envelope, sealed tight, my name scrawled on the front. Diane had set it up so a process server would meet me there. Some guy named Mike, all business in a cheap suit. I handed him the envelope in the lobby, the air smelling of floor wax and coffee. Make it quick, I said, my voice low. He nodded, heading for the elevator. I stayed by the front desk, pretending to check my phone, but my eyes were locked on the glass doors. Emma came down a few minutes later, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her face buried in her phone. Mike approached, said her name, and handed her the envelope. I watched it happen like it was slow motion. Her fingers froze, her eyes flicked up, confused, then wide as she read the label. Divorce papers, financial fraud complaint. Her face went pale like someone had drained the blood right out of her. She looked around wild and spotted me across the lobby. Leo, she mouthed, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stared back, my jaw tight, until she turned and stumbled toward her office. My phone buzzed as I walked out. Her number calling already. I blocked it before it could ring twice, my thumb steady even if my heart wasn't. I drove straight to a locksmith, a guy I knew from a job site, and had him meet me at the house. By noon, the locks were changed, the new keys cold in my hand. I called the bank next, froze our joint account with a single phone call, using the code word we'd set up years ago for emergencies. Emma's cards wouldn't work now. Not for gas, not for coffee, not for anything. I pictured her trying to pay for lunch, her card declining, and felt a grim satisfaction. Not joy, just justice. Back at the house, I packed her clothes into trash bags, her sundresses, her work blouses, the scarf she wore every fall. I left them on the porch, neat but final. The business was next. Harper and Sons Construction was ours, but Diane had drawn up paperwork to dissolve Emma's partnership, citing her fraud. I signed it at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd planned our future over burnt dinners and cheap wine. By evening, I knew she'd tried to get in. The neighbor, Mrs. Carter, called to say Emma had shown up, banging on the door, her face streaked with tears. She'd left with Doug, his arm around her, her bag still on the porch. All she had now was him and that stack of legal notices, divorce papers, fraud complaint, a court date looming. I sat on the couch, the house too quiet, the air heavy with the ghost of her perfume. I didn't feel like a winner, just a guy who'd torn down a life he thought was real, left with nothing but a pile of papers and a hollow chest. Months passed, the kind of time that blurs at the edges, one day bleeding into the next. I couldn't stay in our old house. Every corner held a memory. Her laugh in the kitchen, the way she'd hum while folding laundry. It was suffocating, so I sold it, took my half of the equity, and bought a small cabin just outside Asheville, tucked in the Blue Ridge Mountains where the air smells like pine and the mornings are quiet. The place was nothing fancy. A one-bedroom with a sagging porch, a wood stove that smoked if you didn't baby it, and windows that rattled in the wind. But it was mine, paid for in cash, no mortgage, no fine print. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I moved in on a chilly spring morning, my truck loaded with just the essentials. A few boxes of clothes, my tools, a beat-up coffee maker. The cabin's interior was rough, exposed beams and scuffed floors, but I liked it that way. It was honest. I spent the first weeks fixing it up, patching the roof, sanding the porch, painting the walls a soft gray that caught the light just right. I'd work until my hands ached, the radio playing old country tunes, Johnny Cash's voice keeping me company. The physical labor grounded me, kept my mind from wandering back to Emma's pale face in that lobby or the numbers that proved her betrayal. The divorce went through quick, thanks to Diane's airtight case. I got the business, Harper and Sons, free and clear, kept it small, took on only the jobs I could handle with a couple trusted guys from the old crew. The money wasn't great, but it was steady, and I didn't have to look over my shoulder for fake invoices anymore. Still, the quiet moments hit hard. Nights when the cabin felt too big for one person, when I'd sit by the wood stove with a beer, staring at the flames, wondering how I'd miss the signs. That's when I knew I needed something more than just a new address. I found a nonprofit through a flyer at the hardware store, pinned to a corkboard next to ads for used lawnmowers. It was called Second Start, a group for guys like me, men picking up the pieces after toxic relationships. I showed up to my first meeting in a church basement, folding chairs in a circle, coffee in a styrofoam cup. The other guys were regular folks, carpenters, teachers, a truck driver with a beard like mine. We didn't spill our guts right away, just shared bits and pieces. Stories of lies, cheating, bank accounts drained. I didn't talk much at first, just listened, but it felt good to know I wasn't the only one who'd been blindsided. After a few months, I started opening up, telling them about Emma, the photo, the embezzlement. They nodded, no judgment, just quiet understanding. One guy, Tom, had a story like mine. His ex cleaned out their savings for some guy she met online. He'd started helping others spot financial abuse, teaching them how to check bank statements, question shady transactions. I took to it naturally, my engineer's brain clicking into place. I began volunteering with Second Start, running workshops in that same church basement. I'd stand at a whiteboard, marker in hand, showing guys how to spot red flags, small, sneaky transfers, vendors with no address, receipts that didn't add up. It wasn't just about numbers. It was about taking back control. Helping others gave me purpose, something I hadn't felt since the early days of building the business with Emma. I'd drive home to my cabin after a meeting, the mountain roads winding through fog, and feel a kind of peace. Not happiness, not yet, but a steadiness, like a foundation poured right. The cabin was home now, my books on the shelf, a new rug by the door, no trace of her lavender shampoo. I was building again, not just a house, but a life. No lies, no hidden agendas, just me and the truth, solid as the oak beams overhead. Months after the divorce, I was finally settling into the quiet of my new life. The cabin outside Asheville had become home, its rough pine walls and creaky floors a comfort I didn't expect. I'd painted the porch a deep forest green, the kind that glows in the morning sun, and spent evenings by the wood stove, a cold beer in hand, listening to the crickets hum through the open windows. The nonprofit Second Start kept me busy, helping guys like me piece their lives back together. It was steady, honest work. No lies, no hidden agendas. I thought I'd left the mess with Emma behind, buried with the divorce papers and the old house. But life's got a way of pulling the rug out when you least expect it. It was a Thursday evening, the sky bruised purple over the mountains, when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. No caller ID, just a string of numbers I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, figuring it was a spam call about car warranties. But when I played the message, a woman's voice came through, soft and nervous, like she was afraid of being overheard. Leo, my name's Megan. I'm Emma's sister. She's missing. I didn't know who else to call. The words hit like a punch. Emma never mentioned a sister, not once in 7 years. I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand, a chill creeping up my spine. Something in Megan's voice, shaky but urgent, told me this wasn't a prank. I called back, my thumb hesitating over the screen. Megan answered on the first ring. "Leo," she said, her voice cracking. She told me Emma hadn't shown up for work or her apartment in 2 days. Her car, that beat-up blue Civic, was found abandoned at a gas station an hour outside the city. Keys still in the ignition. Nothing inside. Not her purse, not her phone, just an empty coffee cup rolling on the floorboard. I went through her things, Megan said, her words rushed. Like she asked me to if anything ever happened. There was an envelope sealed, with your name on it. She said to give it to you. Only you. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry. "Bring it," I said, giving her the cabin's address. "I'm here." By nightfall, headlights swept across my gravel driveway. A dusty Corolla pulled up, its engine coughing as it shut off. Megan stepped out, looking so much like Emma it stole my breath. Same dark hair, same sharp cheekbones, but older, lines etched around her eyes. Her shoulders slumped like she carried too much weight. She clutched a manila envelope, her hands trembling as she handed it over. No words, just a quiet, pleading look, like she was begging me to understand something she couldn't say. I nodded, took the envelope, and watched her drive off, the Corolla's taillights fading into the dark. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, a beer sweating on the wood, the envelope in front of me like a bomb. I wasn't sure I wanted to touch. The cabin was silent except for the tick of the clock and the faint crackle of the wood stove. I tore the envelope open, my fingers clumsy. Inside was a USB drive, black and scuffed, and a letter in Emma's handwriting, the same neat cursive she used for grocery lists. I unfolded it, my heart pounding, and read it once, then again, my jaw dropping so hard it might have hit the floor. "Leo, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I never meant to hurt you. Doug, he wasn't just a fling. I lied, yes, we were together. But I didn't know who he really was. I thought I could control it, walk away clean, start over. But Doug was playing a bigger game. He's been laundering money through my department, using fake accounts I set up for the business. When I found out, he threatened to pin it all on me, unless I gave him a cut. The affair was his leverage, his way to keep me quiet. I stayed silent to protect myself. And you. But it's spiraling. He's demanding more. Says he'll ruin you too if I don't pay. I don't know what to do. Please help me." That was it, the last I ever heard from Emma. I sat back, the letter shaking in my hand, the USB drive glinting under the kitchen light. All this time I thought I'd been the mark, the fool who didn't see her betrayal. But we'd both been played, pawns in Doug's dirty game. The cabin's quiet felt heavier now, the peace I'd built crumbling under the weight of a truth I didn't want. Drop your theories in the comments. Do you think Leo will risk that peace to dig into Emma's situation, or will he choose to protect his new life? And if you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.